What's up, guys? Welcome to Reseller's Life. My name is Chris. Thank you so much for joining me. In this episode, I'm going to talk about the reseller dip and how you can get through it and what exactly it is. So this is the same with every single thing that's worth it. When you first start, it's going to be really fun, really exciting, really novel, meaning you've never done it before, so it's exciting. And you're going to have really tremendous progress when you first start because you're going essentially from zero. It's not uncommon for resellers to list 10 items and sell 2 or 3 in the first couple days right when you're getting off to a start because you're selling things maybe you already know or items you already own, and you get excited. You're willing to take, any deal to make a deal in the beginning, and you get excited on this really nice tear in the beginning and start making some money. But then you actually start putting in more effort, more time, more resources, and you actually make less money for a while. And this is what I call the reseller dip. And it happens in everything, in weight loss, in weight gain, in financial savings. Everything has this dip because as you learn a new process or learn a new system, or you try and scale, meaning you hire someone or you try to outsource a specific thing, that costs money and time. And you actually end up taking your eye off the ball of your original project or your original items, so you actually make less money. And this is going to happen. And the categories that have the larger dip are the ones that are the most worth it. So I would say the most profitable category in reselling is recycling. So if you can get items for free and sell them for a lot of money, that has the best potential, lowest cost, highest return. But there's a huge dip in the middle while you learn how do you get these recycled items, how do you repair them, how do you sort them. If you're doing specifically electronics recycling, you also need certifications, and you also need a large space because it takes space, time, and expertise and certifications to properly dismantle electronics and recycle them so the personal information is deleted. So there's a really deep dip here in learning that curve. And what happens is most resellers never make it out of this dip to where their store is stable and they make a similar amount of money week to week. They just perpetually are in this dip because when they try to grow, it gets hard, they make less money, and they panic and they go back to where they were in the beginning, doing every single thing by themselves. And in many books, this is called getting small. When people get fearful or they start making less money, they get small, they constrict, and they never make it through this dip. So my point is, it's really, really worth it to try to survive through this dip, because if you do, automatically you know that 80-90% of people have given up before they get to this point. They didn't stay the course and recognize you need to get to a certain amount before you make a certain profit consistently. So in my store, Daily Refinement on eBay, that's the username, you'll see that that store has about $110,000 listed. So I have here a very conservative plan, which is $107,000 listed. Now, notice I don't have a number of items listed because that doesn't matter. You actually want the fewest possible items in the 100,000 listed. Now, I know a lot of examples of people that are between 500 and 1,000 items listed and have this $100,000 listed amount. Now, that's not a very big store. 500 to 1,000 items is just a spare bedroom. It's not a ton of space either. But taking the time to learn a $108 average sale price or a $216 average sale price is a really deep dip. You've got to really take some time to learn what does the market want. The majority of items on eBay are under $20. I think, 90% of items sold on eBay are under $30 and half are under $12. So the majority of stuff on Amazon and eBay is really, really cheap stuff that's brand new. So if you're talking about finding a pre-owned item that sells for $100 to $200 on average, you have to have a very, very high expertise level. So this is why I want to give you guys some ideas here, like quitting bad categories. What is a bad category? This is something I think is pretty straightforward. If you have a retail shop, people pay Keystone, which is 50% of retail. Now in reselling, the resale world, people pay like sometimes 5% of retail. It's $100 retail. They only pay $5 because it's a pre-owned item. right? And then maybe it doesn't sell for 100 brand new online, it sells for 70. And this item is obviously pre-owned, so maybe it sells for 30. And maybe there are a lot of people selling that same item, so you have to lower it to 20, right? So buying it for 5 and selling it for 20, but essentially 5% of MSRP is what you're paying. Now, I consider it a good category if you are willing to pay half and still make a profit. I would consider it fantastic. And that is something that is what retail stores do when they have the brick and mortar. They can charge more because the experience is different. You go in there, you work with a live person. You don't bargain when you go into Bed Bath & Beyond. You just pay the retail price. So that being said, if you're not willing to pay half of the item, I wouldn't consider it an excellent item. It's just an average item. And average resellers don't make it out of the dip. So you do not want to be an average reseller. You want to be one of the few people who makes it out of this dip and earns $1,000 a week profit. Now, you just can't give up on the way there. So number one, you have to quit bad categories. It's already been proven. If you want to get really good at reselling, do 1 to 3 categories. You don't have to reinvent this. There's plenty of people that are trying to say, I want to be good at 100 categories, including myself. When I first started, I experimented with 30 categories because I didn't know which one I wanted to do. I finally settled in on a couple different categories, but again, being exceptional 1 to 3 categories is already proven. So don't deviate from that unless you really don't know what you want to sell. In that case, try a bunch of categories and then slowly quit the bad ones. And the bad ones I define as, if you're not willing to pay half of what it sells for, that means it's not that great. It's just average. There are certain items you would for sure pay half for. Stick to those. Number 2, don't settle until you master the category or your processes, because this dip right here is really painful. Imagine you're working harder in your business, spending more time than ever. You've lost all your hobbies, no more free time. Your time with your family is a little bit stressed because you're thinking about your business when you're with them nonstop, and you're not making the profit that you want, and you're working more. It's very frustrating because you've invested all this time, money, resources, space, mental, everything, and you're in this dip. You're actually making less money than when you first started, and you're just experimenting with reselling. You're making more money than this dip part. It's totally normal, and so I just don't want you guys to give up until you master your category and your processes, and it takes a while to get to 100,000 listed. Again, this is based on a 20% margin, okay, meaning 20% profit. If you make 40% profit, so twice as much, you only need half as many items. Okay, so you can do the math and adjust it. I'm just saying most people starting, if your margin is higher than 20%, usually what that means is you have a low ASP. Okay, meaning you paid $1 for it and you sold it for 20. But if you look at the math here, look how many items you need at $20 ASP. You need 8,000 to comfortably make $4,300 profit at this amount. So let's just cut it in half. If you had 40% margin, which is ridiculous, that means like you're netting almost half as much. You're making the profit margin of what people normally would pay for an item, right? You still need 4,000 items. Okay, most people can't do that. Most people do not have the space or money to get 4,000 items. And even more important than the space and the money, because you might be paying only $1 or getting your items for free, is I think it costs about $350 to list an item in your time. So that's $15,000 investment up front to get to that level, which is more expensive than you would think if your items are only $1.50 or free. So again, don't get trapped into the cheaper the better. It's not just that. It's also the amount of profit that you make. I'd much rather buy something for $80 and sell for $120 over and over again, because I'm making a $20 bill every single time I do that, and it's less work, right? So it depends on your average sale price. Okay, and then the third one is you're not going to have any cash during this time. Okay, so this is why people who have a job accelerate at this much faster than people who are doing it and taking the money out, because during this period of time, you're spending a lot of money but not getting a lot of revenue till you get to a certain point. It took me since November till now, that's 5 straight months of listing 30 or more items a day to get to this point right here where it's generating comfortably $4,300 profit or $1,000 a week. That's You could definitely do it part-time. But again, you need the capital to invest in the listing part. So the cost of the item plus the listing part. Generally, people who spend up, if your average cost of the item is $20 or $30, those people do a lot better than the people with the average selling cost of $1 to $3. Always. Because if you're only selling thrifted goods, the average thrifted good is $12 shipped. It's really low. I can give you guys some examples of stores that have 6, 8, 10,000 items that operate in that only thrift store model. One example is Luxus and Invoco. That's a store that has 6,000 items and they sell 2,000 to 2,500 items a month. And that store, unless I'm missing something, is only making between $5,000 and $10,000 a month net with 6,000 items listed perfectly. There's nothing wrong with that, because if you have that model, then you don't need to rely on good items coming into your store. You've got a system where you can consistently list at a high volume and ship at a high volume. And congrats to that gentleman being able to keep 100% positive feedback, because imagine how difficult it is to deal with customers who complain at $12 total cost. Very difficult, right? You've got to have ninja customer service skills to make sure those people are happy, because they don't see much value in your items if they're only paying $12, right? It's easier to have a really high customer experience if your average selling price is higher, because the customer is looking for a higher quality item and you don't have to have as big of a store. So again, this reseller dip just requires you to get really good at your processes, really good at your sourcing, and you have to get to a certain amount listed. Okay, make sure you understand your margins, and then you have to be patient until you reach 100,000 listed, or if you have 40% margin, 50,000 listed. And some people only sell home runs. Okay, so you might only need 20,000 listed if your margin is 80%, right? There are people that have an average selling price of 100 and never pay over 10, right? I know a lady that has 800 items in her store and she sells between 10 and 20 items a month. So that's 1 to 3%, but she makes $100 profit an item. Just 800 thrifted items in her store, and she takes, I don't know, a week to find 5 or to 10 of these pieces. She just does 99% shopping, looking for these ridiculous high-end dresses, and she doesn't pay over 10, right? So, but I don't see people doing that model. They do sort of a hybrid. They pick up everything along the way, and they end up with piles that they can't list. So you got to choose what you want. Do you want a high ASP, or do you want volume? You got to pick one of these two things, and then you have to be patient all the way until you reach that habit of listing $1,000 a week profit over a certain amount of time. Same thing with weight loss. Same thing with building muscle. Same thing with savings. Everything is similar. The more worth it is, the deeper the dip. So hopefully that was useful, guys. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And this episode was brought to you by my reseller field guide. All of my lectures and ideas and the way I do it is all set up in that field guide. It's $35 with code YouTube. That really helps out the channel if you pick that up. And I appreciate you guys' time, and I'll see you guys on the next show. Until then, make progress daily.